Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as we know that we are covering the financial knowledge and the banking awareness part of it, and basically now we had started a discussion over the topic of types of banks. Right? This is the topic we have been discussed since the last few lectures, and basically so far we had discussed the two types. The first was the commercial banks. Second was the regional rural banks. Alright, I hope that you revise these type 2 banks properly before you are watching this lecture. Alright, if you are not revising the previous lecture, you won't be able to connect the things together and formulate a clear picture which will help you to grasp the full marks in the examination. Not full marks, up to a good marks in the examination. Alright, so that's why it's my urge to you, kindly revise these two lectures properly before you have come for this lecture. Alright, so in this lecture basically we are going to start a discussion over the cooperative banks. Okay, about cooperative banks we had taken an overview in the lecture. And what was that lecture? Come on, it is my question from you. What was that lecture in which we had taken the overview of this? Tell me. The lecture was for the Banking Regulation Act, right? And it was the last lecture, I think, in which we had started the discussion over the Banking Regulation Amendment Act, right? The year was 2020. Okay, so what this amendment actually did? Okay, so this amendment basically brought cooperative banks under the regulation of the RBI, right? So in that lecture I had given you the overview about the cooperative banks, but right now we are going to discuss the cooperative banks in a full detail. Okay, so this lecture is going to be a very important lecture. Please pay your attention clearly. Oh, okay, and I had provided you the overview for it. Now if we take the introduction of the cooperative banks, then cooperative banks are a unique category of financial institution in India, serving both urban and rural areas. They are registered and regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. Cooperative banks can be further divided into two main types: urban cooperative banks and regional cooperative banks. Okay, so whatsoever discussion we have done so far about the commercial banks and the regional rural banks. So what we had figured out? We had figured out that the commercial banks are mainly interested in the urban areas. Why? Because I have told you they are getting a sufficient deposits, they are getting a sufficient people to take the loans on high interest rate. Alright. Whereas the regional rural banks is especially designed for rural areas and semi-urban areas. Okay, but when we come to the cooperative banks, then cooperative banks is basically focusing on both the areas, urban areas as well as the rural or the semi-urban areas. Okay, and after the amendment of 2020 in the BRA, right now they are registered and regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. Got it? So this is the general introduction about the cooperative banks. But if we try to figure it out, what is the kind of cooperative banks, then how you can say it. So let's start it. Okay, so basically in a cooperative banks, people come together and contributed a sum or particular amount. Okay, the amount will be the bank's capital. Okay, then they will use that summed amount for banking services. Okay, this is just a general overview. Now try to figure it out. Suppose there are 10 people. Okay, these 10 people had contributed rupees 1 lakhs each. Okay, so the total amount after summing up will become rupees 10 lakhs. So this 10 lakh will be the capital of their cooperative bank. Got it? So basically you can say the cooperative banks generally working and focusing on the money pool principle. Money pool principle. Okay, in which the people come together, they contribute their amount together, the particular amount get piled up, and this piled up amount will become the capital. Okay, so these 10 people who had contributed the amount will be using the services provided by the XYZ or cooperative bank as a banking services. Got it? So that's how the principle of cooperative banks works in India. Got it? Now, if we move forward, we will find out that cooperative banks are basically divided into two types of banks: urban cooperative banks and the rural cooperative banks. So let's start with the first case, which is known as the urban cooperative banks. Okay, so the urban cooperative banks are a cooperative banks that primarily operate in the urban and the semi-urban areas, catering to the financial needs of the local population. Okay, so if we talk about their operational areas, so their operational areas are urban and the semi-urban. Okay, catering to the financial needs of the local populations who are residing in that particular areas. All right, they are registered and regulated by the Reserve Bank of India under the Banking Regulation Act 1949, and they are also subject to the guidelines and the regulations. Okay, now what are the services are being offered by the UCBs or the urban cooperative banks? So they also offers a wide range of banking services, including the savings and the current accounts, the fixed deposits, the loans, and the payment services. It means that they also take the responsibilities of bills of exchange and the other credit line facilities. For their customers. Okay, similar to the commercial banks. All right, so you can say, however, they are formed by the cooperation of some people. Some people by money pooling principle. Money pooling principle. But still, they have the services similar to the commercial banks. Okay, but services are similar to commercial banks. And you can see sometimes the motive behind establishing the cooperative banks is just like this. Okay, suppose we had three banks, A, B, C. Okay, whether they are public or private, all these three banks have their own policies and rules and regulations. Okay, and thereafter we had got a group of people suppose 20 people's group we have got. These 20 peoples are not finding themselves in cooperation with these own policies and the rules and regulations adopted by ABC. Okay, in this case, they want to get a bank for their services, but they are not satisfying and agreeing to the policy and the rules and regulations being implemented by the ABC. Okay, so in such a case, all these people come together. They had decided to cooperate the amount, and it was decided that the entire people will contribute rupees 20 lakhs. It means 1 lakh each person will contribute. Okay, so when they money pooled it, the 20 lakhs will become the capital, and then they established their own bank called XYZ. So that was the main motive, and sometimes it is the only motive behind establishing the cooperative banks, that you are not getting what you are expecting from the other banks who had already established in the market. So that's why people generally find a solution for it by establishing the cooperative banks, in which they could formulate their own policies and rules and regulations. Okay, but here remember one thing: policies and rules or regulations of these three banks will be subject to be regulated and monitored by which authority? By RBI. Okay, they are answerable to the RBI for each and every policy making and for rules and regulations. Okay, but in case of the XYZ, which is the cooperative bank, prior to 2020 year, when the amendment didn't establish in the act of BRA, okay, or you can say when the amendment was not introduced in the act of BRA, all right, these banks were not liable or subjected to present their views on the policies and the rules and regulations in a satisfactory manner to the Reserve Bank of India, because they are not under the regulation of the RBI. But after the 2020 or the BRA amendment, they also put under regulation to RBI. Okay, so here remember one thing: right now, whatsoever rules, policies, regulations will be made by these 20 people, they are also liable to the RBI as per the other banks. But somehow, because the bank has been established by them, so they could modify the policies, rules and regulations as per the ease of their members, but still they are subjected to the RBI. Okay, this flexibility option, like molding the rules and regulations, was not available with the ABC. Got it? So remember this point also. Okay, so they offered this kind of services. These banks are often smaller in scale compared to the nationalized or the private banks, and typically serve a more localized customer base. Why these are small? Okay, Because these banks A, B, C, they having a large customer base, they having a large funding, they having investor partners. Okay, in case of public banks, the government is funding them. But when it comes to the cooperative banks, then generally the capital comes from money pooling. Okay, that's why they having a limited operational scope, and that's why they are smaller in terms of the public or the private banks. Okay, like in the previous case, if we say that we have the three kind of banks, A, B and C. A is having the capital of 500 crores, B is having the capital of 200 crores, all right. C is having the capital of 1000 crores. Why? Because they having a large customer base, they having the investors, they having the government beside them. But when we come to the XYZ, then it was established by the money pooling and the working capital was only rupees 20 lakhs. Okay, so if you compare this with this, you will say that the XYZ having a very low capital or the operational area in comparison with the commercial banks. Okay, and they are served the localized customer base. In case of ABC, they having a large customer base, so their customers are not localized. But in the case of XYZ, the XYZ is serving those 20 people who had contributed the amount in its working capital. So that's why they having the localized customer base. Okay. Thereafter, UCBs are governed by a cooperative structure with members who are also customers having voting rights in the decision making process of the bank. If we go by this thing, all right, if we go by this particular thing, then what we have observed, the XYZ was established with rupees 20 lakhs capital, right? This 20 lakhs was contributed by the group of people by investing rupees 1 lakh each, right? Okay, and these group of people did not contributed the amount to get the to become the investor or whatever. Okay, they contributed the amount to establish their own bank and then use it as a customer. Okay, so from the one side, this is the customer base, but from this side, they are the investors. Okay, so we can say in the cooperative banks, the customer is also the shareholder or investor. Okay, so in parallel to the customer rights, they also enjoys the ownership rights. Okay, like the voting rights in the decision making process of the banks. All right, so suppose if XYZ is making the policy for the market segmentation or whatever, so all these 20 people having the voting rights in this decision making, because they are not only the customer but also they are the members. Got it? Now let's move forward. After UCBs, now we have the RCBs. Okay, rural cooperative banks. Rural cooperative banks that primarily operates in rural and the semi-rural areas, providing banking services to the farmers and the rural communities. So remember, these are the banks who are operating in the rural and the semi-urban areas. Okay, and in these areas, their customer base is largely come from the farmers and the rural communities. Registered and regulated by the NABARD and the prospective state cooperative banks. Now here is a twist. In case of urban cooperative banks, or in case of rural cooperative banks. There is a difference. What is the difference? Urban cooperative banks are basically comes under the Reserve Bank of India. Okay, whereas regional or rural cooperative banks comes under the National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development, NABARD in short. Here is RBI. So remember this thing. UCBs directly report to the RBI, where our RCBs directly reports to the NABARD and the state cooperative banks. It means that generally the district cooperative banks. Okay. Now if we move forward, RCBs plays a vital role in agricultural and the rural development by offering agricultural loans, crop loans and other financial products to support farmers and agricultural related activities. Okay. Because it will be established by the mutual understanding of the needs. Means suppose there is a group of 20 farmers who were not satisfied with the services being offered by the commercial banks, RRBs. So that's why after using the money pooling activities, they had established their own bank called ABC. Okay, so this ABC plays a vital role in the agricultural and the rural development by offering loans, crop loans and other financial products to support farmers and agricultures who are generally the members. Okay, now they will get the loan on their own terms but subjected to the guidelines issued by NABARD. Alright, these banks often function as a critical part of the rural credit system, ensuring that the credit reaches farmers and the rural entrepreneurs. Alright, critical part for the rural credit system, ensuring credit reach farmers and the rural entrepreneurs at most flexible needs. Okay. Thereafter, now we are going to talk about the key functions, alright, of the cooperative banks. The first is the customer ownership. Alright. So the cooperative banks operate under the cooperative structure where customers who are also the member of the bank have ownership rights and participate in the decision making process through voting. Why? Because cooperative banks are generally established by the money pooling. Okay, like there is a group of people who are generally not satisfied or who are planning to do some their other things. So they come together, contributed the amount alright, and the sum up amount becomes the capital, right? Okay, and this capital will be used for people who are the contributors to provide them the banking services at their own demands, but subjected to the RBI and the NABARD. Got it? So, as I had told you, this is the XYZ. Okay, this is the people's group. The group contributed the money and the group taking services. In such cases, when they were contributed, they became the investors. And when they are taking such services, they became the customers. Okay, but ultimately and eventually the stakes or the money contributed to the XYZ belong to this group. Okay, so they are the stakeholders or they are the shareholders. All right, so we can say this banks having the customer ownership, where the customer who are also the member of the banks. All right, and because they owns the share or owns the stakeholding, so that's why they having the rights and they participate in the decision making through voting process. Got it? Thereafter, the financial inclusion. This is another important term. Okay, both UCBs and the RCBs contributed to the financial inclusion by providing banking services to people in urban and the rural areas may not have access to the traditional commercial banking. All right, like if we take example, we had a group, right? We had a group of 20 people. What was the cause? I had given you the example. The cause was they were not satisfied with the services, or they were not getting access to the services. Okay, so in such cases they are typically excluded from banking structure or financial services, right? But then we had seen that they had using the money pooling activities established their own banks, right? So now they have access to banking services. Okay, it means now they are included to financial or banking, or you can say financial or banking services. All right, that's why the establishment of the urban cooperative banks and the rural cooperative banks are essential for the financial inclusion by providing the services for the people in urban areas and the rural areas who may not have access to the traditional banking or commercial banking. Got it? Thereafter, community-based approach. Thereafter, community-based approach. Cooperative banks are closely connected to their communities and are often seen as community-oriented financial institutions. Why? Because if we take the example of group of people who had established a bank called XYZ. So their prime motive behind establishing the XYZ is to address their needs. Okay. Second thing is that they are customers and typically is owners as well, right? So if we go by these things, we will find out automatically the bank is responsible for the community of the group of people who establish it, because they establish it for their needs, and right now they also own the stake they participate and they vote in the important meetings of that banks. Okay, that's why the bank is connected to the communities, and the bank is having the community oriented financial institution approach, because whatsoever the bank will do will be decided by the community, who is just not only the owner but also the customer. So they will try to address their need as much as possible. Got it? Thereafter, the priority sector lendings. Okay, it means that however the cooperative banks established for community oriented approach, okay, still they have their PSL targets. Okay, because right now after the amendment they are also being treated as a normal bank. Got it? And as per the normal banks, they are also getting the priority sector lendings, like lending the loans for the agriculture, for the rural development and small scale industries like other banks. Got it? Now, if we move forward, we will find out the RBI regulations. Okay, RBI regulates and supervises cooperative banks to ensure their financial stability, compliance with the regulation, and protection of the depositors' interest. Okay, RBI prescribes licensing norms, capital adequacy requirements, and operation guidelines. It means that any bank which is to be operated in India as a tag of cooperative banks must obtain the license from the RBI. What is the procedure will be decided by the RBI. Second, must have a particular capital as per the RBI. And second is how they could operate. Operation guidelines are also being provided by the Reserve Bank of India. Okay, and this was ensured by Banking Regulation Amendment Act 2020. Got it? Thereafter, if we talk about the challenges, cooperative banks may face challenges related to the governance, financial management, and the need for modernization and digitalization to stay competitive and meet the evolving needs of their customer. Why? Because this is generally stated by the community, not by the experts. Okay, and they are mostly orientated on the community needs rather than marketing or customer oriented. Okay, that's why there must be, or there might be, you can say, there might be a challenge with the governance, financial management, and the modernization and digitalization of the bank to stay in the competitive field and meet the evolving needs of their customers. Got it? Thereafter, the depositor protection, like the other banks. Okay, deposit in cooperative banks are ensured to a certain limit under the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantees Corporation. Okay, it means that suppose if someone having the account in XYZ and the XYZ was the cooperative banks, thereafter some time the XYZ become insolvent or bankrupt. It means that the XYZ is not able to repay their deposit to the people who had deposited the money with them. In such a case, depositors will get amount up to rupees 5 lakhs as a protection against the deposits by the DICGC. Okay, it means that if someone had deposited rupees 10 lakhs, okay, in the XYZ, and the XYZ become insolvent or bankrupt, in certain cases, this person will get up to rupees 5 lakhs back. Okay, but if some person who had deposited amount below rupees 5 lakhs he will get the entire amount back. Okay, so it means that DICGC ensures that if your amount is below 5 lakhs, you can get the entire amount. But if your amount is more than 5 lakhs, you will get the amount up to rupees 5 lakhs only. All right. So if we summarize the things, then what we will find? In summary, the cooperative banks, including the UCBs and the RCBs, are an integral part of India's banking system, playing a critical role in promoting financial inclusion, supporting agriculture, and providing banking services to urban and rural communities. Cooperative structure and community-oriented approach make them unique contributors to the country's banking landscape, because right now they are focusing on the financial inclusion as well as they are serving the needs of the people. Okay, so students, in this lecture, basically we had done with the cooperative banks. In the next lecture, we will start with another important bank. Till then, just revise all the facts and figures we have completed in this lecture and be ready for the another lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture and thank you.